All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Today, I have the privilege of having one of my tag team partners on this podcast with me, the one and only Marc Jenkins, the guy who's holding it down with the Kitchen Sink podcast. Just before I let Marc, have the opportunity to speak for himself, I've known this gentleman, and I've had the privilege to know this gentleman for 30 years now. And it's one of the finest people that I can honestly say I've ever come across. Very knowledgeable of a lot of aspects, not just sports, business, and finance as well. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank him for joining me on this platform. Marc, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Will, and thanks for having me, man. Great intro. I appreciate that, and I'm excited about this little show we're doing right here, man. When you approached me with the idea a couple of weeks ago, I was like gun ho, and just doing the research on this was fun. So I know this is going to be even more fun, man.
Listen, man, this is a topic, that's been around for quite some time. It ain't going away. And I figured, you know what a better time than the present for us to touch on it. And it's the diminishing numbers of black players in Major League Baseball. And it's not something that happened overnight. There are some positive signs on the horizon to slightly change some of those numbers. And just before I turn it back over to you, just last year when the 2023 MLB season began, there was just over 6% of black players on 25-man major league rosters around Major League Baseball. It's been a dip. It didn't happen overnight. It's been consistent in there nonetheless. But I just want to get your thoughts on it. We got a lot to cover, but let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah, man. Just looking at the numbers, just eye popping to me when it comes to the decrease that we've seen. And unfortunately, this isn't something that has happened, overnight. This is something that we can kind of trace back, going all the way back to 94, 95. The strike year, like kind of maybe the strike affected some of this because that's when the numbers started to decline. And every year since then have declined year over year. So that's alarming that it's been, a 30-year kind of process, so to speak, now. And now it's up to baseball, it's up to us, it's up to pretty much everyone to try to hit a U-turn with this and change the direction and the course of what we've seen over the past 30 years.
Oh, listen, definitely, because you and I literally like we're about the same age. So it's like it was nothing for us when we were growing up to see, not only black baseball players, but great black baseball players. You had King Griffey Jr., love him or hate him. You had Barry Bonds. You had Barry Larkin. You had Dave Stewart, Darryl Strawberry, Tim Raines, Rickey Henderson. I could go on and on and on and on. And, to give you an idea of that, the 1994 MLB All-Star game, 8 starters for both combined for both the American and National League were black that day, okay, including the likes of Kirby Puckett, Frank Thomas, and others. By 2013, there were only two black starters in the All-Star game. And you look at it, it's one of those where baseball is not as sexy, so to speak, in our community in comparison to football and basketball. Because listen, I can tell you um, from my college days, okay, it's one of those where, and even in high school days, the basketball team could win 5 games, but it's one of those where they consistently had the girls showing up to the games to
Yep.
see them. Football team could win 2 or 3 games. They still got the cheerleaders, they still got the girls. It's one of those with baseball. Listen, ain't nobody coming to your games unless
No.
it's mom or dad or if you're talented enough, maybe a college scout or maybe an MLB scout. Other than that, you're just playing for the love of the game, you know?
Right. Nobody wants to sit 95-degree weather, just sweating buckets, just sitting there watching baseball. Unfortunately, I would, but there are not many people that will. Many people have referred to baseball as watching grass grow or watching paint dry. So the average consumer, especially in African American communities, unfortunately, we just don't gravitate to that sport. And we're going to dive into a bunch of reasons why that is. As this show goes on.
Yeah, for me, one thing I think about we live in a microwave society right now,
Mhm.
okay? And it's one of those where people want instant gratification, both as a consumer of a product, as well as, the employee of the product, so to speak. And just looking at sports as an example, you as a fan, you watch the NBA draft. Okay, you take a guy in the top five, you know, barring injury, he's going to start. Okay, come game one of the season for the NBA, you're going to have an opportunity, to see him in whichever summer league. Like okay, to see how he plays against a different level of competition, X, Y, Z. Football, if you're taking a guy in the first round, unless it's a situation like the Atlanta Falcons this year when they took Penix right after they signed Kirk Cousins,
Right.
okay, that guy is going to start. Baseball, it doesn't work like that. You can get drafted in the first round, but you might not see the big leagues for 4 or 5 years. You might
Mhm.
not see the big leagues at all.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like from an athlete standpoint, you're looking at it, man, I gotta go through all of these levels just to get where I can get right now in the NBA or the NFL. I liken it for me taking it back, a moment right here. I think back to playing Gran Turismo for the first time on PlayStation. Loved the game. Okay. But the whole process was frustrating from the standpoint that, like, yo, you needed like 5 or 6 licenses just to qualify to compete. And I'm like, a lot of guys, they don't want to do that. They just want to put on a
Yeah.
game and they just want to get to it. And I think, that right there has been scaring some people off as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the process is like you said, we're in a microwave society and everyone wants instant gratification. And with baseball, you're going to be in, single A with 50 people in the crowd watching the game. And the only reason those 50 people are there because it's 25-cent hot dog night or something like that. So
Yeah.
you're gonna be in those situations. You're gonna be going to these small little rundown towns on
A
really
bus.
crappy bus. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so, a lot of them don't want to go through that. Perfect example, look no further than Kyler Murray, drafted by the Oakland A's a couple years ago, 10th overall selection in the first round by the A's. I think they offered him like a guaranteed $10 million deal or something like that. He opted to go back to school, play another year in college, and then get drafted the next year by Arizona, number one overall. Now, granted, he's putting $10 million to the side, and we can, I guess, we can do that now in NIL times, where they're going to receive a little chunk of change while they're in school. But could you imagine 20 years ago somebody foregoing 10 million up front to say, no, I'm going to go back and hit the books and go get my brains beat in on a gridiron and then come out the next year? Like, I don't think that happens 20 years ago.
No, it doesn't because I was going to touch on Kyler Murray, and I'm happy that you brought it up. And I thought that when it happened, I think like I was talking to people that I know, and I was like, all of us agreed MLB has a problem
Yeah.
because if you're telling me that a kid was picked top 10, got the guaranteed money, and he's like, no, thank you. But I mean, Kyler Murray has long since surpassed that 10 million with what
Right.
he's made, in the NFL. And but nonetheless, I think back to about around 20 years ago, there was another guy who had a similar dilemma, Jeff Samardzija. Okay,
Hmm.
wide receiver at Notre Dame, was also a pitcher, and Jeff Samardzija could have been a first round pick in the NFL draft that year, and it was one of those where he took the longevity as far as the guaranteed money
Hmm.
of the National Football, pardon me, MLB at the time. But just touching on that, it's one of those, we don't have the multi-sport athletes like we did once upon a time. And it's starting from a young age because you got these coaches, okay, at the high school and AAU level, especially the AAU level.
Yeah.
They're kind of, just forcing these kids into one sport. Why? Because they see that they can make some money off of these kids. And it's like now they have them focusing on one sport, 24 hours a day, 365. It's not like when we were in high school, if there was a talented football player that, the coach would tell them, okay, you know what? When we're not playing football, you go run track, you go play basketball, you go
Mhm.
wrestle, you go do something else. So I think right there, that is changing part of the narrative as well because it's making the pot smaller for Major League Baseball to go out there and find talent. And then the thing is, when these coaches, are forcing or putting these kids with a tunnel vision from such a young age, focusing on one sport like it's a job, it really is not giving these kids the fallback options like they did once upon a time. I think back to Kenny Lofton. Kenny Lofton was a phenomenal basketball player at the
Mhm.
University of Arizona. He was part of that first Final Four team for Lute Olson in '88
Mhm.
with the likes of Steve Kerr and Sean Elliott and others. But Kenny Lofton's best talent was at baseball, and he parlayed that into a phenomenal career. You had Tony Gwynn, and a lot of people forget Tony Gwynn was drafted by the NBA, by the Clippers when they were still in San Diego.
Yeah.
Dave Winfield,
Dave Winfield drafted by all four. I think
right?
all
He was
four. No, definitely three.
ABA, NBA,
Yeah.
NFL, and MLB.
Yep. So it
And
was four.
right, and I think Dave Winfield's last year at the University of Minnesota, he might have led the Big Ten in rebound.
He did.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but like my point is, just like they're kind of just like tunneling these kids to one sport, and when you don't see the allure of baseball, okay, it's one of those where it's not like I said before, it's not sexy, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, I mean, MLB, they're trying to get ahead of it. We're going to touch on some of those initiatives, on this platform right now. But then also, I think from a broader picture, Major League Baseball, to me at least, does not do a good enough a job of not only, showcasing their stars, but showcasing their game in general.
Yeah.
You think about it. Okay, opening day in Major League Baseball was always late March, early April. Before opening day used to be a big thing. Now it's kind of overshadowed by the tail end of the NBA season and March Madness.
Mhm.
Okay, you think about the NFL draft. There are more people paying attention to the draft at the end of April than they are the MLB season. But then you have Memorial Day, and more people are paying attention to both Stanley Cup playoffs, especially the NBA playoffs. And then how about right now with the 4th of July? There's nothing going on right now. That should be an opportunity for Major League Baseball to showcase their product and maybe say have like a triple header on national TV and not just have a triple header on national TV. That should be a point. Okay, if you're going to do interleague play all season long right now, which I disagree with, how about make that Yankees Dodgers, on a 4th of July week or weekend? Phillies Braves, okay, Red Sox Yankees. I know the Red Sox are playing the Yankees right now this weekend, but nonetheless, put your marquee teams in that spotlight. And I think, all of that, is factoring into it.
Yeah. I mean, really, let's look at it this way too. NBA, NFL, they do phenomenal job when it comes to getting their product on television as much as possible to show people and showcase these stars that they have. MLB does a terrible job when it comes to broadcasting their games. If you really think about it, you've got a TBS game randomly on a Tuesday, which some people may pay attention to. Then you've got basically nothing until Friday, where if you've got Apple TV, you get to watch a game there. And then you've got your Fox deal on Saturday and your ESPN on Sunday. Now, that seems like a lot, but when you compare it to the NFL games all day long on Sunday, then you've got your Monday night game, and you've got your Thursday night game. You talk about the NBA, you've got Tuesday games on TNT along with Thursday games on TNT. You've got your Wednesday and your Friday games on ESPN. You've got your Saturday night showcase games on ABC, and you've got your Sunday games on ABC. And you've got multiple games occurring in a lot of these time blocks, whereas baseball, maybe you got that one game on Tuesday, like I said, you got the one game on Friday, you got the one game on Saturday, one game on Sunday. So you basically have 4 opportunities to watch a game throughout the week, if we're not talking, regional sports channels and things like that. So you've got 4 national opportunities to showcase your talent, as opposed to in the NFL, you've got 4 times in one day. Sometimes in the NBA, you've got 2, 3 times in one day in certain situations. So I think it starts there, to come up with a better strategy with these networks that they're cutting these deals with, to highlight and focus more on the games. Maybe, hey, during the down season of the NFL, why not throw on baseball games in the daytime? Today was a rarity that Fox shows an early afternoon game between the Yankees and Red Sox, but usually you're not getting that game until 7 p.m. You're not
Right.
getting your Sunday game until 7, 8 p.m. Why not monopolize some of this weekend time, where you have kids out of school, you have the parents there with them, to where now father and son can watch a game, and now you grow a whole new generation of baseball fans going forward.
Listen, absolutely. I mean, I think back to, our generation when we got into baseball. For me, I could talk baseball with my dad, okay? I could talk baseball, with my grandfather. My dad, could tell you and talk to you about things that Reggie Jackson, was doing because he was still playing at that point. He could talk to you about Dave Winfield, Darryl Strawberry. He could talk to you about Dwight Gooden, guys that you had to pay attention to. And I'm going to mention a name right here real quick. And I feel like, in my opinion, because I've never really been a big fan of analytics, I feel like it has its place, okay? But it's just one of those things where it's just gotten too out of control. And the analytics to me have ruined the leadoff position in baseball. With that said, the greatest leadoff hitter, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, was Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson, if people, are too young to remember, Rickey Henderson was must-see TV. Okay, you did not want to admit to missing at bat with Rickey because you never knew what was going to happen. And he brought a certain level of excitement. He brought a certain level of flair. And I think a lot of that, has gone. And it was one of those where, because you saw players that were black, you know, playing baseball. And it was guys that were like at the top, Hall of Fame caliber players. And of course, some are in the Hall of Fame. It made it easier to talk to, some of your friends about baseball growing up. Everybody was not, talking about baseball. They would be quick to talk about, basketball, Magic, Isaiah, Michael Jordan, you name it. They would be quick to talk about football, Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, Jerry Rice, whomever. But again, it's just like I think MLB has really missed something with that. I think, again, like I said before, not having the multi-sport athletes from a younger age has taken away from that as well. Because you think about it, when Dion started playing baseball, how many football fans just tuned in to watch Dion play just because they knew it was Dion? The
Oh
same
yeah,
thing.
a lot.
The same thing with Bo Jackson. And
Yep.
I talked about this with Bo Jackson the other day when the Royals put him in their Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor. It's one of those where there's no doubt in my mind that if Bo doesn't get hurt, he's in the Hall of Fame in both baseball and football. That's how good
Yeah.
he was. But you don't have, that kind of appeal from it. And it goes back to what, we were saying before as far as their inability to market their product.
Yeah, it's really sad how they have missed the boat on individualizing individuals and marketing that individual. So let's just look around the different spectrum of sports and entertainment. You go to an NBA game, you're going to see a ton of individuals jerseys. You go to a Nuggets game, you're going to see Jokic jerseys, you're going to see Murray jerseys. You go to a Dallas game, you're going to see Kyrie jerseys and Luka jerseys. You're going to see a ton of those. You go to football games, same thing. You go to a Chiefs game, you're going to see Mahomes jerseys, you're going to see Kelsey jerseys. You go to a WWE event, and you're going to see individuals their specific T-shirts. You go
T-shirts,
to a baseball
belts.
game, yeah. You go to a baseball game, you're not seeing those individual players' jerseys. You're seeing Mets shirts, you're seeing Yankees shirts, you're seeing Giants shirts. You're not really seeing that individual, and I think that's where MLB is missing the boat huge when it comes to reaching out to that younger generation by not really marketing these individuals like all these other leagues and companies are doing.
Yeah, I think what they tried to do with the younger generation, and it's not just a black thing. It's one of those where they're trying to do what the NBA has done, like now with their City Connect jerseys, and
Mm-hmm.
even now, having the players wear specialized jerseys for the All-Star game. I'm not a fan of it. I'm an old school guy, but I get it. Okay, I understand it. Now you're seeing players, not wearing specific color cleats that would once upon a time be part of the uniform. Of course, like when we grew up,
Mm-hmm.
guys only wore different cleats during the All-Star game. It was like a special
Right.
deal. Now things have changed for that manner, and I get it. They're trying to clean it up. They have tried some initiatives, the Andre Dawson Classic, the HBCU Classic. RBI baseball has been around for quite some time, and I think it was 2022 where we saw, like, I think like three out of the first four, like four out of the first five picks for
Mm-hmm.
the draft were black. I
Yep.
think that is going to help the tide, but it's going to be a long time, and I'm not sure if we ever get back to the numbers of even the 80s or 90s. And I look at CC Sabathia. Big CC might be the last Black Hall of Famer for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the numbers are alarming. So I've got a breakdown of basically black player percentages all the way dating back to 1947. So in 1948 was actually the lowest representation that black players had in the MLB, at 0.7% of players were African American that season. Now, every year from there, we saw increases. In 1949, it went up to 1.5%. By 1962, we were up to 10%. By 1970, we were up to 15%. Where we peaked at was 1981, where we're at 18.7%. So that was our peak in 1981. And then throughout the 80s, we hovered right there in the high 17%, low 18%, up until 1995, where we saw it decrease to 16.1. And then it has decreased every year since then, to the point where this year we're only at 6% on opening day rosters.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty drastic right there. And there's a lot of different things. I know, like, there are some people who, feel like, okay, MLB has put academies in other countries. Why don't they do that here? Things of that nature. It's, like I said, there's a lot of different avenues that you could come from it. One thing that multiple people have talked about is the travel ball.
Mm-hmm.
And, travel ball has priced out a lot of people, regardless
Oh, yeah.
of their background, because it's one of those things. It's like, if you don't have the money, that's not a black thing, that's not a white thing, that's a person thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those where, sometimes unfortunately people, can't afford it. It's not like, back in the day where it's like, okay, if you were good enough, you played on your high school team and that was it. And you might have had a scout, come to your game if you were throwing high 80s, maybe if you were clocking 90, or if you were hitting 500, or if you were hitting 400 or 400 foot bombs. But it's really, I think like the travel ball and the AAU aspect have really changed things. But then also, again, it's a slow paced game
Mhm.
and it does not appeal to everybody, regardless of their background. I mean, by me, there's a park and there's two baseball fields there that, unless there's some guys getting together who are our age that are playing, you're not seeing the youngsters there. They'll be on the soccer fields, absolutely. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying, doing their things. And it's one of those, it's like, if you talk to your friends and you call three guys up or you call five guys up and you say, okay, let's go play some ball. I'm like, yo, let's go hoop. Out of those five people you call, three of them are going to be like, you know what, I'm down, and maybe one or two guys will bring somebody with them.
Mhm.
Make that same call for baseball.
Good luck finding somebody that's got gloves and a bat and all of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's one of those where law of averages, if you're going to get somebody like that, they probably played at least minor league ball.
Right, right.
And they just they love the game. You know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think the problem, to what we've kind of been talking about and alluding to it a little bit is definitely marketing. I think that's half of the equation. I think the other half of the equation is definitely the cost of playing the game. Inner city youths, parents don't have, four, five, $600 to shell out on equipment. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for these kids to want to gravitate to the sport. Now, to be fair, Latin American countries, they have, very poverty stricken areas as well, where a lot of these kids are, getting a milk carton and making a baseball glove out of that. But the reason that they're doing that is because representation. They see someone that looks like them, that sounds like them, that came from the same place that they came from. So it's like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it too. And this is what they had to overcome. These are the different obstacles that they had to get over to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. So that representation is huge for these Latin players, these Latin kids who are coming up, because they have someone that they can identify with. So I think first, if MLB can do something with marketing, and then secondly do something with helping with things like the RBI programs and the different initiatives that they have, I think we can then see a spike. But we've got to see that representation change. Like, Latin players right now make up 30% of players on MLB rosters, and that
Wow.
number, if you look back to the same list that I'm looking at, back in 1948, it was zero point 0.7 for black players and zero point 0.7 for Latin players. Now, as time has gone on, both numbers have risen. However, the black players' numbers has declined over the past 20 years, where the Latin players' numbers are going through the roof. And that's because of this huge surge that they're seeing some of the game's greatest players exceeding at a high level, and they want to emulate that. We, unfortunately, are not having those players right now that our kids want to emulate. Therefore, now it's, hey, I'm not going to jump through a hoop to want to play baseball. I'm not going to ask my mom and dad to pay extra money for extra equipment. I'm just going to go get on the basketball team or the football team and save my parents some money there. And then, hey, guess what? Maybe they'll buy me a pair of sneakers with some of that extra money. That's then again associated back to these NBA players, because that's where the majority of the sneaker money comes in. I think Nike and MLB need to get together to really figure out a way how to push more marketing in, with baseball players. Because if you think about it, the majority of the popular cleats these days are basketball sneakers that they turned into cleats.
Yeah. Listen, you're spot on. I mean, you figure, the most popular baseball sneaker ever, hands down, were the Griffeys, and they still are. I mean,
Mhm.
just like it is with the Jordans, you have kids nowadays rocking the Griffeys that never saw the guy played. don't even know a thing about them, but they rock them. But even like back when we were in high school, when Griffey was, at his prime, it's one of those where a lot of dudes would rock the Griffies, and
Yeah.
it was, and they were Nike was on that trajectory with Bo Jackson, clearly pre-injury, and it was the same thing with Dion, but
Mhm.
Dion had more football fans than baseball fans, but Dion will probably tell you if he had just concentrated on baseball, he would have been an all-star caliber player. You know
Oh
what I'm
yeah.
saying? Because I think it was 92 when the Braves lost to Toronto in the World Series. He hit like 420 for that series. And then
Mhm.
he did have one year, I think it might have been when he was with the Reds, where he hit through close to 300.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's just like it's one of those to your point, it's the shoe game because kids, when kids put on a game, they want to see, okay, what kicks, is this guy rocking? You know what I'm saying? I want to
Yeah.
go out there and get him. And Nike, you figure Nike was at the forefront of that, when they signed Michael Jordan to that deal 40 years ago. And of course, the rest is history. But you think about it, how many guys were rocking Converse, for Doctor because of Dr. J or even,
Yeah.
Magic or Bird, back in those days. Dudes who probably weren't even Lakers fans had those purple and gold Converse.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's one of those where you like to your point, you've got to go out there and you've got to do something to get those kids gravitated uh from that standpoint. The NBA does a much better job of that. The
Hmm.
NFL, is doing a better job of that as well from a marketing aspect of their players. And again, getting back to the prime time aspect, I'm not a fan of like the NBA putting all of the teams on TV, but even with that, they still limit how much you're going to see the Charlotte Hornets. They still
Right.
limit, how much you're probably like we saw the Spurs more this year because they had Wemby. All
Hmm.
right. But the thing is like if you're going to put those marquee games out there, you got to be teams that you want to see. But then the problem was a couple of years ago, the Yankees, for an example, would be on, ESPN Sunday night game a lot. And then the Yankees were complaining about it. Why? Because they give them a Sunday night game in the Bronx. Okay, game finishes like around 10:30 or so. In those days before pitch clock, a typical 9 inning game with the Yankees and the
Four
Red
and a
Sox.
half.
Exactly. Okay, and then you turn around and you're like, okay, you know what? I got to hop on a flight and go to Texas. And the Yankees started complaining about it. So it's a lot of scheduling things. And again, it's one of those where MLB has just, dropped the ball. It's gone by the wayside. And like to your point, you have to see somebody that looks like you on TV to be gravitated to a sport. And our kids aren't seeing enough black players like we were able to see at our in our when we were growing up. And then on top of that, when you put on an all-star game, you're not seeing you know as many guys that look like you either. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So listen, it's been a big thing, in Latin America. I mean, you just look at it recently in I think like the last 7 or 8 years, how many like, Dominican born players alone are now getting into the Hall of Fame. It was alarming that prior to a Pedro Martinez getting in, there was only one Dominican born player that had gotten into Cooperstown before that. And you think about so many talented players that have come from DR over the years. But now you're starting to see that wave, of course, Pedro, Big Poppy, um, Vlad Sr., Adrian Beltre, and others. But yeah, you have to see, people that, look like you, you know, and
Yeah.
and appeal to you.
Yeah.
It's just a natural thing, man.
So let's just look back at black players in the 80s and 90s, and let's highlight the 90s specifically. So to the three gentlemen that you mentioned, King Griffey Jr., Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, what do all three of those dudes have in common in the 90s? They all had signature shoe deals with Nike.
Hmm.
So kids wanted their shoes. Here's 3 black players that kids could say, hey, I want to be like this guy. I want his shoe. As a kid, we put on the shoe. We think that that person for an hour or 2 hours or whatever the case may be. Nike is seriously dropping the ball right now, not just with black players, but players in general. Because I think about this with Aaron Judge and Mookie Betts, arguably 2 of the top 5, top 10 players in today's game right now. Both have contracts with the Jordan brand to wear Jordan cleats. However, Jordan has not made either one a
A
signature
signature
athlete.
piece, yeah.
They're literally just wearing the same Jordan ones in just different colors on different days. Today, Judge had on a white and red pair, like, day
Yeah.
before he had on like a fuchsia pair or something like that. But it's like, why not seize this opportunity to not only make yourself more money as a company, but grow the game and grow an entire generation of people coming up behind us to want to be invested into the game. Like, now is your opportunity to do it. It's not like you don't have a couple of marquee names that you can attach some shoes to. I think the last baseball player that got a signature shoe was Mike Trout, and we're talking 10 years ago or something like that when he first came out. And I don't even think Nike even does anything with his line anymore because
He's
unfortunately
been
the guy can't stay, healthy.
right. And just to piggyback off of that, you look at a guy like Shohei. Shohei has that big contract with New Balance, which is part of the reason why, he deferred so much money off of his contract with the Dodgers. But even if it's not a baseball game on TV, you can put on a sporting event and see that Shohei commercial.
Hmm.
You can go and click on YouTube, and like if you don't pay for like Atlas YouTube, you get those commercials and stuff like that. That Shohei commercial will pop up. So like, yeah, I do agree with you. Nike, they have dropped the ball on that as well. But I'm like, yo, MLB again, they need to go out there and market their guys. It's one of those where you look at it from a basketball perspective, generally, when we're talking about like the top guys that have shoe deals with Nike, when are their shoes dropping? Their shoes are usually dropping around the time the season starts because
Hmm.
they're rocking something fresh, and I guarantee you, all of these dudes are going to be wearing something fresh, regardless of the country that they're representing in Paris in a couple of weeks in the Olympics.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so I'm like, you need to have that same energy with Major League Baseball. And I'm like, yo, the perfect opportunity is next week at the All-Star game. Because I'm
Hmm.
like, yo, guys are out there, they're gonna be wanting to wear, some good stuff. And I'm like, yo, listen, this is a great opportunity for, you to go out there and showcase some things. Listen, these kids that are playing Little League, these kids that are playing AAU in college, they're emulating the big guys at the MLB level because we see all of these home run celebrations, bat flips, and jersey pulling and all this other stuff. Why not do it with the shoes? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And I mean, we already talk about it because you mentioned it before, the cost of it because you know some people might understand it, some people might not. But you think not in this exact order, but like baseball, lacrosse, and I think hockey are probably the three most expensive sports to sign your kids up for if you want to play because of the equipment factor. Because you think about it, when you play football, it's basically like, all right, you know what, just get your own cleats.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing at the high school level, the school's gonna have the pads and everything. Basketball, listen, just get your own kicks, you're good to go. But baseball, it's just like, you got to get your spikes, and those things ain't cheap. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Uh,
$150 there.
right. You know what I'm saying? I remember my grandfather um, bought me an Eastern aluminum bat probably when I was like 10 years old. I'm not sure how much he paid for it. I can't even imagine what kids have to play for. Like, does Eastern even make bats anymore? Is it TPX or
Yeah.
whoever? Okay,
Yeah, TPX, Easton, they're still all in business, and bats nowadays are ranging anywhere from as low as $200 to as pricey as $600-700 for one bat.
okay. So you're talking about, let's just say you pay 300 for the bat. You paid $1.50 for for your spikes. That's $4.50 right there. Okay, we haven't even talked about getting a glove. Okay, and it's one of those where if you play multiple positions, you
Mhm.
might not have the same glove for each position because a first baseman's glove is not the same as a right fielder's glove, and a right fielder's glove is not the same as a catcher's glove. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So then, so then you got that. Then, you have batting gloves because you don't have too many Vlad Guerreros around anymore swinging barehanded. And I don't know about you, but I remember swinging an aluminum bat
Oh,
barehanded. It was not fun. Okay.
that sting is painful.
Yes. Okay. You figure we're talking about almost 30 years ago, and I still remember that feeling. Okay. So it's not fun.
Right.
And then you figure aside from the batting gloves, more often than not, most guys they have a glove on their catching hand, when they're fielding.
Hmm.
Okay. So, you have to factor that in as well. So and then whatever team that you're playing on, whether it's high school, AAU, or whatever, pants, um, helmets, and most guys, when they're playing ball, they also have a bag because it's like, if you have multiple bats, you're not just going to sit up there and carry the bats in your hand, the gloves, and all that other stuff. So you got a bag to go along with that. So easily, right off the bat, we're talking about $600-700,
Yep.
and not to mention like a registration fee
Yep.
for a league and whatever like that. So yeah, it's gonna price out a lot of people,
Yeah.
before the word go. And you might have some kids out there that are talented, but you know what? That price, their parents might just be like, you know what? Go over there and play soccer. You know what?
Yeah.
Go play football. Something like that.
Much cheaper. I mean, when you think about it, so I've got this article from a website called jerseywatch.com, and it basically breaks down the true cost of all youth sports for the year 2024. And basically, you're right there on average. It's about $734 per average on average to just get all your baseball equipment and get rolling. So,
Yeah.
how many inner city parents just have $700 just laying around that's not accounted for something else, that's not for this bill or for these groceries or whatever the case may be, just to say, hey, go have some fun this summer.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, like I said, that's a part of it as well. Again, the cool factor, because you and I talked about this the other day. When you think about the NBA, okay, when you think about the NBA's All-Star game, okay, that whole weekend, regardless of the city that the All-Star game is being played in,
Hmm.
that place is littered with celebrities. That
Yeah.
place is littered, okay, with rappers and singers. Whether it's Drake, what I'm saying, Meek Mill, whomever. You
Hmm.
go to an NBA game around the country, or even in Toronto,
Yeah.
okay, there's somebody there sitting courtside watching that game. You think about, the Super Bowl, okay, the Super Bowl, the game is one thing, but just being there is an event in itself. And I know,
Hmm.
of course, all the Swifties showed up, in February in Vegas, because Kansas City got there. But nonetheless, Taylor Swift aside, yo, you will see a who's who of celebrities, at the Super Bowl. And generally, every celebrity has like you know, a team that they rock with or a player that they rock with.
Hmm.
Because even throughout the season, they'll go to that they'll be at that team's home stadium and stuff like that. You even see it in soccer, from a European standpoint, where it's like, guys are showing up, showing love, or rocking, a Man U jersey, rocking a Barcelona jersey, whatever it is. You don't get that in MLB. It's just like you figure you'll see dudes rocking football jerseys, repping their team. You'll see or repping with their player. You'll see guys rocking that football jersey, repping their team, repping the jersey. Basketball, you name it. You're not seeing that with Major League Baseball on a
Hmm.
hip hop level. I mean, you figure, RIP to him, I think about, Tribe Called Quest or Fife Dog. Fife Dog always, regardless of the sport, was repping a team. And, he was from New York. So, he repped the Mets, he repped the Yankees. You think about Nelly. Nelly, I mean, Nelly played minor league ball, but Nelly was always repping St. Louis.
Mhm.
Whether it was the Rams, whether it was the Blues, whether it was the Cardinals. MLB doesn't have that right now. You know what I'm saying? And from a hip hop aspect, and I think that right there is hurting them as well.
Oh, big time. And here's I think a thing that a lot of people are missing. And if Rob Manfred gets a hold of this, you need to really take some notes because, in my opinion, you're the worst commissioner in North American sports currently.
Bravo.
But but if you think about this, right? So NBA All Star Weekend, Super Bowl weekend. When is the MLB All Star game played? On a freaking Tuesday
Tuesday.
night.
Yeah.
So you first of all, you're already shooting yourself in the foot by not allowing millions of fans to descend upon whatever city that this event is being held to boost that local economy because NBA All-Star weekend, every city that puts one on says the economy quadruples during that weekend on how much the city takes in. Super Bowl, I think it's like 10 times how much these cities take in. Baseball is not getting the beneficiary the side effects of this because they schedule it on a Tuesday and it's always been on a Tuesday. So that's the main problem with baseball. And trust me, I'm a big time baseball traditionalist. You know this. However, some traditions need to be broken in order to maintain the game growing and thriving. Second thing, too, with the All Star thing, in my opinion, is there aren't enough skill competitions built around it itself. And I was just watching the Yankees and Red Sox earlier today, and AJ Przinsky was on the call. And he made a comment basically saying, we've got the home run derby, and that's it. And the home run derby has lost a lot of its luster over the past 10 to 15 years. The last really big home run derby that I can recall was probably when Josh Hamilton went crazy at Yankee Stadium that night. Other than that, they all seem the same. It doesn't really seem nothing stands out. So I think that they need to build some type of skill competitions. Maybe it's, to see the catchers, how many people they can throw out at second base, or maybe it's a base running competition to see who can get around, all four bases the quickest. I don't know what that looks like, but something's got to be done to really get more people focused on the All-Star game and everything surrounding the All-Star game. I think one, you move it to a weekend. I think you hype up this futures game way more than they have been hyping it up because again, this is the future of the game. You want us to know who these young stars who are coming in and going to be the faces of the league for the next 10, 15 years. If we don't know who they are, how the hell are we supposed to cheer them on?
Listen, I am right there with you on switching things around because I feel like this. Major League Baseball has switched some of its traditions, trying to go for a popularity aspect. Again, for me, I'm not a fan of, players wearing like personalized uniforms for the All-Star game. I feel like, that's what made MLB unique. I'm not a fan of the pitch count and ghost runner and all that other stuff. I'm not a fan of interleague play all season long. Okay. I think they really, in my opinion, I think they need to scale back interleague play. But you kick those traditions to the side, but then you want to stick with the tradition of having your midsummer classic on a Tuesday night. And to me, I think the interleague play has kind of like hurt the All-Star game. And the reason why I say it is this because, there was a time when that was the only opportunity that you got to see Pete Rose and like Reggie Jackson on the same field because Pete Rose spent his entire career in the National League. Reggie Jackson spent his entire career in the American League. So of course, if they didn't meet each other in the World Series, you didn't see these same guys on the same field. So I think interleague play has hurt that, in my opinion, like the amount of interleague play we have. But also, yeah, listen, you think about it, your futures game, the futures game is usually held on a Sunday afternoon. the last Sunday before the All-Star break. What's happening then? You're having big league games at the same time.
Yep.
So unless your team is like out of it, okay, and you're like, you know what? Let me put on this futures game because we might have like two prospects in this game. Let me pay
Yep.
attention to see what they're going to do. You're not watching that game. And again, some people might get tired of me saying this, but the analytics ain't helping either. Why? Because now everybody's worried about launch angles and stuff like that when they hit. So everybody's trying to jack 20 home runs. It's not like before, if you watch the home run derby and you're like, yo, I get to see Barry Bonds. Yo, I get to see Mark McGuire. Granted, whatever, you want to say about them, positively or negatively, you tuned in to watch them, okay?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you don't there's not that, oh, well, let me pay attention to this guy moment in the home run derby. Kind of like, the slam dunk contest. I'm with Dr. J on the slam dunk contest, to change the gears real quick. Whereas like the YouTubers and all this other stuff, they've taken away from the dunk contest because everything's out there. And it's kind of like with the home run derby. We've kind of seen it all. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
How far is a guy really going to hit a ball? You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those where it's it's not as popular. It's not as appealing as it once was. And I'm like you. You know what? Have an overall skills competition to it. Let's see who the fastest man is in baseball. Of course, most people ain't gonna want to do it because most of them don't even run hard to first base anymore. That's a whole
Right.
other story for another day. Let's have a fielding competition. Whatever you got, but you got to do something else.
Yeah, something different, and they've got to market it better. Like
Hmm.
there's no excuse as to why the NBA has their rookie sophomore game or whatever you want to call it now on national television for everyone to watch, main event part of the weekend, and the futures game. I couldn't even tell you what channel it's broadcasted on. Probably MLB Network, but how many people? I guarantee you, MLB Network is the least subscribed to of the big three: the NBA, the MLB, and the NFL Network. Guarantee you, MLB Network is the least subscribed to. So if you're going to put this futures game on that platform, you're already doing yourself a disservice because you're not maximizing viewership and growing the game by putting it on something that not many people have in their home.
At this point, you probably have more people watching the NHL network or even the Big Ten network than the
Yeah.
MLB network. And, to your point with that, because, with their initiatives as far as like, the HBCU games, the Andre Dawson Classic and things like that, generally it's televised on MLB. And I
Hmm.
think, maybe easier said than done, but I'm like, yo, maybe y'all could do something with those classics around the All-Star game or maybe even at the
Yeah.
All-Star game site and I'm like, yo, just make it a whole weekend for, these youngsters to go out there and showcase their talent. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you look at it, the HBCU Classic has helped.
Hmm.
The Andre Dawson Classic is helping as well. But I think, we need, more of that if they're going to
Yeah.
try to go out there and bump these numbers up.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it too, like, if they really are, they have the best interests at heart for the game and growing the game,
Hmm.
maybe not charge $150 or whatever it is a year for MLB Network or whatever. Like NBA is getting $150 for their platform. So why, if you're not as successful as they are, why are you going to have the audacity to charge the same amount? So maybe do yourself a favor and maybe cut that in half. Maybe now you see subscriber numbers increase, and then in turn, with those subscriber numbers increasing, more people are watching these games, and you're growing the game. You're getting popularity back. You're getting the younger audience more interested in it. I don't know. It's just a thought that I think maybe they should consider because there's no way that if I've got a similar product to someone else and that other company is outperforming my product day in and day out, there's no way I'm going to sit here with smart business savvy and continue to charge the same amount for that product.
You know what it is, in my opinion? The respective team owners of Major League Baseball, and granted, all of these guys have been and gals have been successful business people, okay? You look at the National Football League. The NFL makes money hand over fist. I mean,
Hmm.
they hemorrhage cash, okay?
Yep.
But it's one of those where they could gross $5 billion for the year. But these NFL team owners were like, you know what? We want to get to 7 billion.
Hmm.
Okay, so what do? They have different initiatives. They have, their international games, which started, with one game a year at Wembley Stadium in London to now, before you know it, they're probably going to have more games overseas than they are, in the States, Thursday night football, uh, the draft. I mean, you look at the event that the draft, has become. My point is Major League Baseball, they're trying to get on board with that right now, but I think, the ship has really left the port. It's like now they're trying to have an overseas series. Granted, they've had it for years over usually like in Japan. Okay. And
Hmm.
like I know they've had, series, whether it was in someplace in Latin America. But this whole Europe thing, they're like way behind the curve on that.
Yeah.
You look at their draft coverage. Nobody, I mean nobody, pays attention to the MLB draft.
Nope.
Okay, because it's like why? Because most of these kids that get drafted ain't gonna make it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So now they're trying to do an all MLB team and all this other stuff. It's like, listen, y'all just need to stick to what has gotten you this far, but still y'all need to make tweaks and adjustments to go out there and it's going to appeal to the youngsters. And I think that's the big thing for me. And like I said before, they have to find a way because if these kids at a young age are going to be pigeonholed into one sport, and I still disagree with it,
Hmm.
you got to find a way to get those kids that would have played baseball back to baseball. Because I mean, you look at it now, if there's a strong possibility. We got the start of the NFL season about 2 months away. There's a strong possibility that 14 starting quarterbacks for the upcoming season in the NFL could be black on week number one. And you figure, more often than not, most quarterbacks were pretty good baseball players, in their youth. So you have to see that and say, hey, you know what? Maybe these guys, could have played baseball at some point. Well, we know Russell Wilson got drafted.
Hmm.
We definitely know Kyler Murray's story. I mean, Pat Mahomes, you figure he had a baseball player in his home,
Right.
in Pat Mahomes Sr. So, but it's like you have to find a way to kind of get those kids back into your sport. But it is going to be very tough when you're seeing a guy like a Dak Prescott, who, in my opinion, is an okay NFL quarterback, but
Hmm.
he's generating a salary of $50 million a year, free endorsements.
Right.
Yo, if you're Major League Baseball, and I know that the longevity is there, they have more longevity in their careers than the National Football League. But when kids see that and they say, you know what, I get an opportunity to get some of that, and even from a college level now, because the NIL money for baseball ain't going to be what it is for basketball and
No.
football.
Fraction.
I'd say that
Fraction.
right now. Yeah. So it's still gonna be tough for baseball to try to get those kids back to their sport.
Yeah, and like this is a point that I think a lot of people, it kind of goes over people's heads. So you look at basketball, look at the game of basketball. When do you start promoting someone as a star on YouTube or Instagram or whatever social media platforms? Usually eighth, ninth, 10th grade. You look at football. When do you start doing that? Probably more towards senior year of high school, freshman year of college.
Hmm.
Baseball, the problem is here, we don't know about these guys until the first time they put on an MLB uniform.
Yeah.
We haven't watched, we weren't lucky enough to watch a baseball game with baseball's equivalent of a Cooper Flag and a Cameron Boozer playing in a game against each other. Same thing with these big college football games. Baseball games are broadcasted few and far in between. The only time that you can see a consistent number of college baseball games is during the College World Series and the softball World Series. It's the only time you're really seeing it on, and then you're only seeing it on ESPN. You're not seeing it multiple places. So I think baseball has to do a better job of getting with their networks that they have deals with and saying, hey, look, we need to put some more high school games on randomly. We need to put some more college games on randomly. Hell, let's put some minor league games on so we can get invested in these kids in AA and AAA and say, hey, you know what? We got this guy coming to our team in a month or two, maybe, or maybe next season, as opposed to, well, I've been hearing about this guy or I've been reading about this guy and he's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I subscribe to a lot of different sports channels. So for me, I'll watch the Big Ten Network, I'll watch the SEC Network, ACC Network, the Texas Longhorn Network, FS1, you name it, and like they put more college baseball games on now, okay? But even looking at the college baseball games, okay, it's one of those scenarios where you look at some of the most popular programs in the country, and I'm just throwing a couple out there. So forgive me, anybody, if I didn't mention your school. You got Clemson, okay? You've got Texas, you got Florida State, you got North Carolina, okay? You got, just to name a few. What do all of these places have in common? Big schools from big conferences,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And even with that said, these schools are consistently ranked in the top 25. They're consistently going to the College World Series. They're consistently getting their kids drafted. But when you watch their games, they have seating behind the plate. They have seating somewhat down the left and right field lines. In the outfield, there's absolutely nothing. Now, if you go to Death Valley to watch a football game at Clemson, you're going to get 80, 90,000 people there.
Standing room only.
Same thing at DKR in Austin to watch the Longhorns. Same thing, in Chapel Hill to watch the Tar Heels. My point is like it's just not, popular, for people. I mean, I think back to, growing up and being in high school. Listen, it was nothing to see, the girls, be willing to talk to the football guys during and after school. Same thing with the basketball guys. You play baseball, some of the girls might not even know that the school had a baseball
We've
team.
got a team, right?
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you play baseball? Listen, unless that girl really liked you,
Right,
okay, and it wasn't just my high schools, high schools all over. They
right.
weren't going. They weren't going to your game. You know what I'm saying? There's no Friday night lights,
Right.
okay, for football. I mean, for baseball, like it is for football and basketball.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just a popularity thing. For me, I would love to see the popularity, return to our community. I I don't know if we're ever going to get back to the numbers that we were at in the 1980s alone. Just, excuse me, just due to the fact that the money that is being thrown around in both the NBA and the NFL. I mean, you look at it, yes, unlike the NFL, MLB money is guaranteed, but you figure nowadays these players have to wait till they're like 28 or 29 to get that big deal.
Yeah.
And you figure as a first round pick in the NFL, okay, you're probably going to get drafted when you're 21 or 22. So you get that 4-year deal with the fifth year option. Most guys, if they're good, they outperform that deal. So after year three, they're like, yo, let me get this extension and let me get, this big contract. So law of averages, let's say you get that big contract after your fourth year. You're still 25, you're still 26. You still have another opportunity, to get another big contract after 30. You look at the NBA, most of these kids, they're one and done, in
Hmm.
college nowadays. So they're coming into the league 19, 20 years of age. They play out that rookie deal. And in most cases, they're getting that extension before the rookie deal is up. So you figure by the time you're 25 years old, you're making 40, $50 million a year.
Hmm.
Okay. And then you're going to flip that around. You're going to get at least one more big contract, in the NBA. So you've already seen the money. And it goes back to what I said before. This is a microwave society. We want that instant gratification. And on top of that, as a pro athlete, regardless of the sport, you don't have a long shelf life. So you want to go out there and get that money, get that generational wealth,
Hmm.
as quickly as possible. So I think that is something right there that has, put, MLB behind the curve. And I really don't I'm not sure if they're ever going to be able to catch up to it because at this point, I just feel like the genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah, they've got to do something about the whole arbitration situation, like how baseball's set up to where basically you're captive until you're close to 30 years old, and then you're basically got one chance to get a big deal. And then also what that does too on the flip side of things is now you're paying 40 million, $30 million a year for someone 36, 37, 38 who's no longer playing at that level. You're paying him for, it's kind of like a career achievement award with salary, so to speak, with that. So baseball's definitely, they have to figure out a way to do something about making these players eligible to get paid a little bit quicker. Or if they're not going to do that, like I said, they've got to go to their sponsors and come up with some type of, come to Jesus moment where it's like, hey, we're going to start really rolling out the advertisement and marketing bucks for these players, because that's another reason that they're not going to the MLB, because hey, I can go sign an NBA deal now, and tomorrow I may not have a signature shoe deal, but guess what? I do have a contract with one of these companies to where I am getting paid just to wear this product. I don't think baseball has a situation like that where, they're just wearing whatever cleats they want to wear. They're just using whatever glove they want to use. Rawlings isn't kicking in, $10 million a year to this guy for using a Rawlings glove or Rawlings, batting gloves or anything like that. So Major League Baseball's really got to do a better job of going to their sponsors and saying, hey, we need some more money for the players in order to continue to grow the game.
Do you ever see the numbers as far as black baseball players getting back to maybe 10 or 15%?
I think we can make that happen. I think it starts with, representation first and foremost. Who is this 8-year old kid who's sitting on his couch? Who is he looking up to? Who is he looking and saying, hey, in 15 years, I want to be this guy? So it starts with representation first and foremost. Second of all, I think it starts, you got to do a better job marketing and really sponsoring these players. And third of all, baseball itself has to do a better job of getting the youth to gravitate back towards the sport, because it's been so long now where I think baseball's biggest problem is they thought that they were
Bigger than what they are.
recession proof.
Yeah.
So they didn't think the strike was going to bother them, and it did. They didn't think the steroid situation was going to bother them, and it did. They didn't think the pace of play and just these long drawn out games were going to bother them, and it did. So I think for once they need to meet something ahead of the curb, so to speak, as opposed to waiting for it to bubble over and become the situation that it becomes before fixing it. And I think if those things can happen, then we can see 10% black representation in the game and greater from there. But I think it all starts with that top guy in the top seat. And I think Manfred is a terrible commissioner. I really do.
Listen, I couldn't agree with you more on that last part. It's one of those where for any of those people out there who felt like, Bud Selig was, not that great. I mean, Bud Selig, looks like an icon,
Looks
you
like
know,
King George the Second.
exactly, in comparison to Rob. I call him clueless Rob Manfred. You know what I'm saying? As far as the job or lack thereof it that he has done with this game. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those I would love to see the popularity, grow in our community. It's one of those where unless you love baseball, it's a boring sport. People want to see, more fast-paced stuff. That's why we got 140 to 125 finals in the fourth quarter for a
Right.
fourth quarter NBA game right now, where we got like, 35 to like 33, NFL games and stuff like that. Me personally, I love a pitcher's duel. And I would love to see, when pitchers would go out there and just be allowed to pitch for 9 innings. I love the strategy of baseball. I'm mad
Mhm.
that, they made the designated hitter universal because I feel like when you go into a National League park, it made you strategize more with the pitcher's position, whether it was doing a double switch or like
Mhm.
bunting, moving the runners over, a lot of that stuff, and it's a very strategic game, and you have to be focused and you have to pay attention, at all times. And it's like, unfortunately, it ain't happening right now, but will the numbers ever get back to where they were in the 80s? I doubt it. For me, if they can get back to 10%, I think that would be tremendous. But like I said, things like the HBCU Classic, things like the Andre Dawson Classic as well, those things are helping.
Yeah.
And let's just see if we, can keep that popularity going.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it all starts, like you said, 4 out of the 5 top draft picks from last year's draft were black players. So I think that's a huge starting point there.
Hmm.
And I think that, we've got to see them marketed, and we have to see, young black males and females say, that guy's cool. I want to be like him.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it, just, even before us, a lot of people gravitated to Reggie Jackson because I mean,
Yeah.
Reggie Jackson, for some people, he was arrogant, but you know what? He knew how to back it up, and he knew how to perform on the big stage. You think back to maybe our grandfather's generation with a Willie Mays, or even taking it back, to the Negro Leagues, with somebody, you know, as talented, as maybe, I know Jackie Robinson started in that league. Um, gosh, Satchel Paige, for an example, like his name had just like slipped me for a moment there. But a guy like Satchel Paige, who like people just wanted to see him play because he was an older guy who was like defying the odds or something like that. Like I said, with Rickey Henderson had, to me, he had swagger before Dion had swagger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It was, and it was like one of those, Ricky would hit that home run, pop that collar, and do his thing Cadillacing around the bases. A guy like Barry Bonds, who I think most people gave him a pass as far as posing for home runs because it was Barry. You know what I'm saying? And then he had the one earring, hanging
Hmm.
down. A guy like Griffey, and I heard the story from Griffey as far as like why, he always had his hat backwards. But it was one of those where he still made it cool. And I'm like, you think about it, how many kids out there, regardless of their background, probably didn't play baseball after that with their hat turned backwards
Yeah.
because of him. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's things like that, man. And even for me, I think about, Dave Winfield. And Dave Winfield, he never had batting gloves on, but he always had a couple of gloves hanging out of his back pocket. Things like that, man.
Hmm.
So hopefully, they can get back to it, and hopefully, 10 years from now, because it's going to take some time. It's not going to be
Yeah.
just like that. But hopefully, 10 years from now, you and I and others are having different conversations on this matter.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think it all starts with Aaron Judge, man. I think that they've got to do a better job of marketing the guy. I mean, first and foremost, he's one of the few black players that's actually at the top of the game, but also the guy's 6'7", almost 300 pounds. Like, you can't miss him. So you have an opportunity to just, there's no reason that I should not see him on random commercials more than just a Jersey Mike's commercial every once in a while?
And not only that, but you figure Aaron Judge is in the media capital of
Yep.
the world. For me, maybe, just maybe, because I really do think, the MVP award is Judge's to lose in the
Hmm.
American League. And of course, if he gets it, that's going to be a second one in the last 3 years. He's on pace, if he does not get hurt, to hit 60 again.
Mm-hmm.
So, sake of argument, let's just the Yankees are going to. I know they're in a slump right now, but they're going to get to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say Judge tears it up. Let's say the Yankees and Judge get to the World Series. Let's say they win the World Series. Okay, that is a golden opportunity for Major League Baseball because we're talking about your most iconic franchise in your biggest market.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it, usually guys in the New York area when they're at the top of their game, they are marketed, okay? You think about Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, if he wanted a Twinkies commercial, okay, when he was playing for the Yankees, he could have had it. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those where like everybody, knew where he was. And I mean, that was one guy where, the girls didn't have a problem, not knowing who he was.
Right.
Okay, you know what I mean? So it's one of those where I think like definitely, it gets back to the marketing aspect from MLB. They just have to do a better job with their guys. I know like even pre-injuries with Mike Trout, people would always say MLB needs to do more. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
Rob Manfred took the wrong approach saying, hey, he needs to reach out to us more on one of those type things. And I'm like,
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
this guy's a three-time MVP. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, man. And it's like you're seeing more with Shohei, good. That's good, but I'm like still stateside, they've got to do more.
Yeah, there is. They missed the ball big time with the whole developing that rivalry between Bryce Harper and Mike Trout. They had the opportunity to just run with that, and they did nothing with it.
Yeah, and I mean Bryce Harper again, generational talent. And just going back to the NBA real quick, they knew what they had with LeBron James before LeBron James even stepped into the NBA. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
still talking about when he was playing high school ball.
Yeah,
And the NBA marketed the what out of out of LBJ. Okay,
yep.
so it's one of those where generational talents are exactly that. They're generational talents. They don't come down the pike that often. You've got to utilize what you have, and Major League
Yeah,
Baseball simply has not done that.
not at all.
Nah. But listen, man, this has been tremendous, and this ain't gonna be the last time. I tell you that much. Mark, I thank you so much for contributing your mind, uh, and your thoughts on this podcast. And please, I want you to take the next couple of minutes to let the people know about the Kitchen Sink podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will. It's definitely been a blast, man. And you guys check out the Kitchen Sink podcast. We go live Wednesdays at 9. We did Mondays, but I decided to change it to Wednesdays. Football season's right around the corner, and nobody's trying to go head to head with Monday Night Football. But basically, what we do is we just dive in on everything, talking about the world, current events. We do self-help topics. We have guests like Will was on an episode. We do roundtable discussions. Just a little bit of everything, man. So definitely check it out on YouTube. It's the Kitchen Sink, spelt SYNC, because we're trying to be in sync with everything. So
Listen, Mark, when this is officially up on YouTube, please, feel free to go into the comment box and I'll put a link there for this as
definitely
well.
will, man.
You know what
Definitely.
I'm saying? Well, trust me, once again, it has been a tremendous pleasure to have you on here. And for all of you folks that, check this out, if you liked what you saw and heard, more than welcome to hit that like and subscribe button to this channel. Also, like Mark said, please be sure to go over and check out the Kitchen Sink channel as well. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off. Thank you, Mark. Once again, it has been a pleasure. I hope everybody enjoyed what they saw on the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here. Until the next time, take care and be well, everybody.
Take care.